And welcome back to the show. Well, listeners, we've got two very special guests on the phone right now because there is a brand new album coming out from Out of Darkness. And of course, we know that you fell in love with their EP a few years ago. Now they've got a brand new album coming out. So we thought today we would actually get a couple of members of the band on the phone to chat about this new album. So welcome to the program, Eric and Bill.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Now, guys, thank you so much for joining us because we know a lot of our listeners out there are very, very excited about this brand new album. So I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about what our listeners can expect to hear on this brand new self-titled album.
Sure. Go ahead, Eric. Yeah, well, this features obviously Deadly Smedley on drums. You know, he's really thunderous. Everybody knows he's got a killer style. He's been around the world doing heavy metal for years with Iced Earth, of course. It features me on vocals, Bill Staley on guitars. This was a more collaborative effort than our first record, and I think it's got a broader sound to it, and it's got a really unique combination of audio flavors that I think are sure to tickle the senses of the heavy metal listeners.
Now, Bill, you are one of the new members of the band. Tell us a little bit about what it was like coming into the Out of Darkness family and how that happened for you.
Sure. Well, I've known Brent for a few years. I moved to Florida 10 years ago, and I met Brent a few years after that. And we had tried to start something back then. Probably this is before Out of Darkness even existed. And of course, his main obligation and employment was Iced Earth. That's what he did. So the band with him was going to be on the side, and then without rehashing it, we all know what happened with Iced Earth. And then I guess Brent was putting together a band. I was in a different band, and I was aware of them. And this crazy looking guy with this amazing voice and this long beard, and the band I was in played a show with them, and we just kind of hit it off, and they were looking for an additional guitar player, and things worked out very well.
Eric, we talked a little bit in the intro about the fact that a lot of people out there have been eagerly anticipating this album's release, especially after the success of the initial EP. Did you feel more pressure putting this album together this time around?
Well, I will say this album, we had some new kind of obstacles to come over. We had like a change of management in the middle of it all, and I was certainly dealing with some personal health issues at the time. But we all came together and we persevered through it, and I think we've got an even greater product than the first record we put out, and I'm really excited for it.
Bill, what were some of the things that you guys talked about heading into this album? Did you talk about any goals that you wanted to achieve with the album when you were recording it, or any themes or anything you wanted to touch on? What were some of those early discussions about this album?
Sure, it's a great question. A musical goal was that we wanted to make an album that we would enjoy listening to ourselves. We made a point to make an album that we didn't feel like we were making it for anybody else. And there are pressures to do that. What's hot at the time, you feel like maybe you should follow that, but we made it a point to not do that. So it's really from the heart. There are some songs that have deep meaning to each of us that we contributed. And as far as, other goals, is we would like to play more and expect, especially outside of the U.S. I've been out a few times, and obviously Brent has done it a ton. But we would like to. Australia would be amazing. That's very ambitious for us. But I know Brent has a pretty good following in Europe, so we thought that might be the first attempt.
So, Eric, tell us a little bit about what that was like, seeing these personal tracks coming in. Like you said, this album has a lot of personal tracks on it, and those tracks were coming in from different members of the band. Tell us a little bit about what that was like, sitting down and reading lyrics and listening to these really personal tracks that were all coming together for this album.
Yeah, it was very exciting because the first record was a little more. A lot of it came from me, and the second record, getting some
input from everybody felt really refreshing for one, and just reading through the lyrics, I saw the efforts that everybody put into it. I saw how it gave us a new artistic artistic sound, artistic style. You know, I really enjoyed reading through Brent and Bill's lyrics and also just hearing their musical ideas. We had some from Brent's childhood that wound up on this. He wrote some of it years ago, and it wound up on this record. And we have some from Bill that he also wrote years ago, and we put our stamp on all of it, and it was very refreshing. You know, getting all this input from everybody. It was excellent. I loved it. Honestly, it was inspiring.
Now we've also got Dan, who's joined us from the band as well. Welcome to the program, Dan. No, Dan's got camera but no audio at the moment. All right then, so we'll go back to you, Bill. Bill, tell us a little bit about the actual recording process of this album. What was that like heading into the studio and working on the album?
Sure, that was exciting and yet challenging at the same time. I was raised up north where you have things like basements that can have studios in them, and then we moved to Florida, and basements don't really exist down here, so you have less space. So therefore, we had to go to a proper studio at least to record the drums. And other than that, I would say, aside from the drums, probably 80 to 90% of it was done here at my house. So that was challenging, and anybody who records at home will know things like outside noises and putting some sound treatment on your walls. Those are key things if you want to get a good sound. But if when we listen back to the album, anybody who has heard it so far is just amazed at the quality of it.
And now I think Dan does have sound. So Dan, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us, and I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about how you felt about working on this album.
You're still muted, Dan.
Yeah, he's still muted. All right, then, Eric, we'll go back to you. Eric, you mentioned a little bit about the band wanting to tour off the back of this album, and you mentioned that perhaps Europe and maybe Australia one day might be an option. Tell us a little bit about those tour plans. What have you guys been talking about heading into tours and things like that?
Well, we definitely took some time off from touring just to do this record, but we've been discussing different possibilities and how we want to expand our reach. Certainly we're going to tour around Florida a little bit. Then we're going to branch around through the United States shortly after that. And then hopefully our reach could extend as far as Europe, maybe even Australia if we're fortunate enough to connect with the right promoters and make it all happen. So we're looking forward to kind of connecting a big tour together after the release of this all, or at least a set of dates to bring our show out to a new audience.
Definitely. Now, Dan, I think we've got audio for you now. Dan, tell us a little bit about what it's been like for you coming into the band, and also what it was like to be in the band while the album was being worked on.
So it's actually been a pretty cool experience. I've worked with these guys off and on for a couple years, and I kind of came in on the back end. Honestly, my bass was used throughout the song because Eric and Bill had used a couple of my basses to do some of the recordings, but I actually came in later on to do a short tour out in Mississippi and Louisiana after the show. So it's just been a pretty cool honor to come on board and work with these guys. Like I said, I've worked with them for a couple of years previously on different projects. So I'm just stoked moving forward to take this to a live audience and just rock it out.
Definitely. Bill, have you played any of these tracks live for audiences at the moment, or is that the next step now, getting out there and playing these tracks live?
No, we have. We've played Creeper, we've played Terraform, we've played our title track, Out of Darkness. and I believe that's it for the new album. So
Yeah.
but we are trying to work them in.
I was gonna ask that. How did they go live? Were they well received?
Yeah, I would say very well. So much more than we thought they would be. Yeah, we had lots of compliments and people looking forward to the album once they heard it.
Eric, I was going to ask you as this question. As I said, the first EP was so well received, and now this album, the music that's come off it so far seems to be being well received as well. How does that make you feel? Like, as you said, this band was something that was generating over a few years. How does that make you feel knowing that there's people out there now who are falling in love with this music and falling in love with the band?
Well, I personally have been very overjoyed because this has been a very, very new experience for me. I've been playing heavy metal music since I was a teenager, and I guess this is the first time I got into a project that developed a real following and really reached a lot of people, you know. And for me, that's very fulfilling as an artist, as a musician. I feel like it's an experience that a lot of people dream about, and not everybody gets to live. So I'm very proud of it. I can't even begin to say how overjoyed I get when I do think about it. And it's a spectacular experience going out there, meeting the fans, you know, playing out for them, taking pictures, signing things, all that stuff. You know, it's just it's a whole other world. It's something very new for me, and it's exciting.
Definitely. Now, Dan, well, the album is about to come out. What do you hope that people out there take away from this album when they sit down to listen to it?
Well, so my personal hope is that people can connect with it on because it has, I think, a multitude of different hard rock metal genres, from prog to kind of a newish metal spin to some classic, you know, thrash on some levels. I think it's going to connect with a multitude of audiences, and just there's a message with every song, and that's kind of, you know, for my history of music, I like lyrics, I like stories, and a message and a point behind the song. I've never really been into the drug, sex, rock and roll thing. Obviously, as you can see, I'm a big Iron Maiden fan, you know, so that there's a story and a message from ancient history to Greek mythology to everything else, you know, in some of that music that I grew up listening to. And that's what I connect with a lot of the songs that are in this album, more than anything else. It just, each one of the songs has a unique flair from each author of each song, and they're telling a story. And I think that the true metal music enthusiast is going to connect with that. And that's personally my hope. So
Definitely. I definitely found that when I listened to the album myself, so I'm hoping a lot of our listeners do as well. Guys, we are right out of time, but to finish off, is there anything that any of you would like to say to your fans out there before they sit down to take a listen to this album?
Yeah, definitely. We hope you enjoyed the album. Check out our website and pre-order it on outofdarknessofficial.com, and check out our social media pages and our music videos on YouTube.
Yeah,